Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the closing panel, our keynote panel for the 4th edition of the Abuja Literary and Arts Festival. Yes, that's the spirit, Ginger. Please put your hands together now. Okay. So this is the last of some amazing panels we've had in the course of this 8-day festival. Yesterday we had our slam, we had our intensive creative boot camp, and today, after this panel, we're going to close with a very interesting ceremony. For this panel, we're going to be discussing how to make art work, the actual, that's the theme of the entire festival. But here we're going to have creatives who are making a living out of their art, okay? And for us, especially members of the Abuja Literary Society, members of this creative society, these are, we need to come and pick some anecdotes and tips from here, because they're going to be telling us things that have actually worked for them over the years as creatives, for them to get to this point where they can actually make a reasonable living from their art. Moderating this panel is the legend himself, the living legend, Dike Chukwumerije, and I'm calling him up on stage now. He's going to introduce the rest of the panels. Panel members, please put your hands together for him.
So without further ado, like they say, we'll go straight to the business of the day. So I'm going to allow the panelists to introduce themselves, because I think it's always best, you know, when people talk about themselves and emphasize the things they want to emphasize about themselves. So I'm just going to give a one-liner and call them up performances. So joining me on stage this evening, we have Ruth Mahogany. Let's give it up for Ruth Mahogany. Hi Ruth, welcome. Good to see you. Just make yourself comfortable. And the next, I have a writer, publisher, literary activist, a maverick in many regards when it comes to writing and publishing. After, I think, some level of frustration with traditional publishers, he started his own publishing company and is still making a lot of waves with it. Please help me welcome on stage Samson Kukogho, more popularly known as KIS. Welcome, Samson, good to see you. And then next on stage we have an amazing dancer. I think she's evolved beyond the dancer now, a movement specialist, amazing dance teacher, instructor, fitness instructor. I think she also acts and sings and has done amazing things in this city. Please help me welcome the lovely Bukunmi Olukitibi, popularly known as Dike. Hi Dike, welcome. Please make yourself comfortable. And finally, the man in black, a filmmaker par excellence, who's had his movies screened locally and internationally, and has made some films. Please help me welcome on stage my main man, Ishaya, Bako. Welcome, Ishaya.
Thank you, sir.
I don't know why they put us so far back into this thing. We should be sitting with the audience and just. Okay, so let's start with. I give very brief intros of everyone. So let me just give you an opportunity to say something about yourself. Who wants to go first?
Ladies first.
Why?
Ladies first.
No. No, just say something about yourself. Introduce yourself properly. So I'll give Ruth.
Your mic is
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ruth Mahogany, and Dike said probably maybe I'm from Jos. I've never been to Jos before. Never been to Jos before. Can you hear me? Is it clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So, like everyone is saying, it's actually very difficult to like summarize what. I just know I love to create art, and art is something I always wanted to do. I read accounting and finance, but I'm not practicing. I tried to practice for a short while before I decided to run to ALS through slams, and that helped me to get some visibility. So my name is Ruth Mahogany. I'm a spoken word artist. I am also working towards being a full-time musician, but not like I'm throwing away poetry. So that, and then I also do creative writing. I write pieces. So thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Bukunmi. I know now you're saying that I don't want to talk. Once you start talking, I will be begging you to stop.
Okay, my name is Bukunmi. Olukitibi. I'm a movement artist, so I dance. And I'm slowly, I teach yoga as well. And I actually a community engager.
With dance? You
Yeah.
engage the community with dance?
With dance and music. I also teach meditation and like sound healing sessions. And I'm slowly allowing myself diversify other and basically use all the other expressions of art that I'm capable of. Yeah.
Thank you, Dike. That was really good. KIS, tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is Samson. I prefer to be called Sam because I don't like biblical names. Yeah, so I'm a writer. I've been into art since I was a kid. It was an outlet for me. You know, growing up where you don't have a lot of expressions with people around, it was a way of communicating. Even though I was the only one reading my work at that time, it was good enough. And I was into all kinds of art. I was drawing, I was painting, I was doing woodwork until maybe till I was 20, and then I went into full-time poetry mostly, and then later on switched back into fiction and all of that. So it's been back and forth for me when it comes to art, and I've fed with it. I like to think that my current job, which is more into policy making, is the kind of art itself, because the way we present how we want our policies to be looked at by people also affects how they are actually interpreted and accepted or rejected. So I think I do art in almost everything I find myself, even in the kitchen, which I love to do very well.
Okay, that's a bit very show. It's like a cooking show. Ishaya.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ishaya Bako, and a filmmaker. So I wanted to start a career in IT, but very early on, I entered the one chance bus that was filmmaking. And then it was something that I thought that I could do for the rest of my life. So, yeah.
Nice. So today we're here to talk about making a living from your art. Okay, Ruth, let me start with you. How hard has it been to make a living as a spoken word artist here in Abuja? Do you actually make a living from spoken word?
Okay. I make part of my living. So I feel like with consistency and showing up over time, things begin to flesh out. So it's the way things are for me now weren't the way they were several years ago.
Okay, let me ask you, if that's if you want to say, when you started, like how much you used to collect? And then sort of how much you collect now? No, you don't have to tell us what you collect now, so that we don't know your market value now.
Okay.
But where did you start from, and sort of where did you climb to?
Okay. So
and how many years did it take you?
Okay, so I started really here in Abuja like 2018. So there's been a kind of speedy growth for me, I think. I started from really doing a lot of free shows that just give me transport.
Yeah.
Like there were times where I even had issues with people because they wouldn't even want to pay my transport. So I've had that, but now like people know the value. So it seems like there's some kind of Ruth Mahogany. If she comes, she will give value. So a lot of people just call me. Like I have contacts in some NGOs that refer me. So when those people refer me, the people that are being referred to already know that it's not. So that kind of, yes. So now what I used to collect then as that's what was very good for me then. Now if people have to pay that, they do a lot of abeg.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. So your value has grown. Your brand has grown.
It does.
Dike, how did you overcome that thing every artist, the kind of art you do as well, faces of I beg, just come and help me dance, just come and help me perform. How did you get past that to letting people understand that, this is a service that you need to pay for? Were there things you did consciously to break past that wall?
Saying no.
Saying no?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, I had to say no a lot of times to a lot of people because people automatically say, is it not just dance? Man, that was a statement I even once I made a t-shirt. So if you say, Bukunmi, can I see you? I have an idea. I'll wear my, it's not just dance t-shirt,
Yeah.
It was, a lot of people say, is it not just dance? And I will ask, would you do it? Can you do it? And sometimes they will say to you, oh, but there's so many dancers that will take the amount. And I would say, please hold them. So for me, again, what Ruth was saying about value, I think it was really about personally putting a lot of time into my own growth. But training dance, but also developing myself to the point where I started to become aware of every other thing that wasn't dance. If you're calling me for something, I would tell you how many hours I have to rehearse, time for which you really cannot pay for, And if I train for, say, 25 years to get to this stage, you're really paying me for 5 minutes performance. And 25 years of training is how I'm able to deliver 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's like that value and my personal growth, especially physically as a dancer, over time. When you see that progress, you see that I'm putting in the work.
Yeah.
And so if I thought that it wasn't worth it, and I'm not just talking monetarily, I would say no.
Yeah. So from what you've said, it's obvious that you as an artist, you have to develop the confidence in yourself to put that value on yourself. And for you, it seems to have come out from, look, I'm putting a lot of work into this, Because I was going to ask you, there must have been a time in your career where you will have been happy with statements like, oh, it will give you exposure, you'll get contacts. There must have been a time when things like that made sense to you.
Yes.
And there was a time when it stopped making sense to you. And what was the transition within you where you were like, you know what, I don't really need the exposure. I need, reward for my value.
Yeah, I think it's also like when you hear exposure every day for 2 years, and then you realize that in 2 years, you actually haven't made enough to pay Abuja rent. In 2 years, you haven't made enough to actually feed. You haven't made enough to be able to comfortably transport yourself to specific places. You haven't made enough to make appearances in the way that you want to be addressed. Like maybe you want to look a certain way. You haven't made enough to be able to do that. You haven't even made enough to pay for training. Let's not even talk about it. You haven't made enough to be able to say, oh, there's this training here. I'm actually traveling for that training because it's going to help me.
Yeah.
And then it starts to become a problem.
Yeah.
And because my line of art is very physically demanding, there's a level of attention that you need to pay to yourself. I remember like some years ago when I had to go and see an osteopath for pain I was feeling in my back. 1 hour was 35,000 naira.
Wow.
So, and this will happen, you know. The other time I broke my head on stage, and 8 months I couldn't even come out, not to talk of perform or be anywhere. It's like, how much did the performance at that stage where I broke my head pay me? You know, so it's that kind of, it's knowing that it's actually not just dance. Every time I show up on stage, it's my life on stage.
Sure. Before I come to you guys, because your art is slightly different from theirs, how do you value your work? You know, how do you put a price on it? What techniques do you use to put a price on what? Let me start with you, Ruth. You know, how do you, if somebody wants to hire with Mahogany, how do you come up with that figure?
Okay, so a lot of times, like, yeah, strategies. When I say strategies, yes, like I figure out what do you want me to do. Am I showing up to perform something new? Something new means there's creative writing involved, and there's going to be a lot of new rehearsal. So that means that's going to be much costlier. So if you want me to just pick something that has already been done before, and now what has already been done before doesn't mean that it's of less value. So that's another thing for me. So if you want new content for what you're working on, so I have prices for that. And then if you want something, so for me, there are several of my pieces that have fetched me cash consistently, and they are still that good. So one of the reasons why I personally also take time to write my pieces, and sometimes I'm deliberate, personal pieces where I just create, I'm kind of deliberate about not putting trends, because if I put something trendy this year, it means that next year that piece is out of vogue, or here. So I create pieces that are all time, even if I die, someone can perform it and it makes sense. So I already know that it's that valuable. But then, okay, I know that I will probably make so much money from this, but then I just have to perform this once, and there's a lot of things. Sometimes I can feel my head paining when I'm writing, like I can feel this tension. So I know about that. So I have price based on that. Yes.
Vicky, what about you? Do you charge? Do you have in your head an hourly rate that you come up with? Or do you literally just pull a figure out of your head based on what your colleagues are charging or what the market rate is? How do you come up with your figure?
Just as it is for creative writing, it's kind of same for dance, because first I have to know what the thing is. What am I working on? How much research do I have to do? Do I have to travel somewhere? You know, I remember earlier this year I was working with collaborative work with some people, and just to be able to make the video, we had to travel 3 states, just researching, just being there, just seeing, just talking with the people. So it really also is about how much research do I have to, what cost will that research be? Then there's costume. There's costuming, there's choreography, which also involves a lot of researching. And there's some things that are just heavier than others, you know, where you really have to go through, maybe also like going back through and rehash or rehearse some personal traumas as well to be able to get access. So for me, I think it's also based off of more than the physical work, how much mental, emotional, psychological work I have to put into that. And then when it's for things like maybe yoga classes, what I've done is I have set up like rates, like to say hourly, you charge this, I charge this. If you want to do 2 hours, then it's this. And then I consider distance as well. So how far am I going to? Like what time of the day? Because some people call me for 6 a.m., some people for 5:30 a.m. Look at the country we're in. How safe is 5:30 a.m.? How much risk am I, engaging in? If I wouldn't charge someone who's calling me for 12 noon, as same as someone who's calling me for 5:30. So it's also really based off of all of this things.
I ask this question because I find that a lot of creatives in this sort of spaces struggle with how much do I ask for and how do I come up with that figure, you know, and I've had a lot of people ask me that. And I've also tried to give people tips, you know, that you can project backwards. You can say, look, I want to earn so and so annually, this is what I want to earn. And if I want to earn that annually, break it down, how much do I have to make an hour to get that? Sometimes you can use that and sometimes you can just break down your creative process. Like you were saying, if it's a new work, I have to create it. How many hours do I need to create it? How many hours do I need to rehearse it? How many hours am I spending at your event? And actually charge for all those segments of your creative process.
Can I add?
Yes.
I usually also, although that is recent, but I've broken it to per minute. So if you want a new piece per this amount of minutes, once it passes this is the extra charge you have.
Yeah.
So if I'm looking for 5 minutes, it's different from me talking for 10 minutes, and it's different from 15 minutes.
Yeah.
You want me to talk the whole day, I do that for you. So that's it.
Dike, I wanted to add something.
Yes, I wanted to say that it also depends. There's also a thing to do with space. So, for instance, as a dancer, if you don't own a studio and you want to create, if you go to another studio, you'll be renting that space. So, as a dancer, if you put into consideration the cost of putting, not even the performance now, like the cost of all the resources that will enable you produce what is asked of you, that's one way. But I also really like what you were saying about projecting, because, and I think it's very connected to what we were saying earlier about value. If you of course know like your personal growth and development as a dancer, and you say in the next 5 years, or let's not even go too far, in the next 1 year, what do I want to be able to afford for myself as a dancer? I think that's a very amazing way to look at it. Another way is to add, if I get hurt, what would it cost to treat me, like to treat my knees? And these are like some injuries that don't go away just like that. They take years or sometimes.
End your career.
Stay with you forever, or really like end your career, as you've said. So I think that it's very, very important to take these things into consideration when charging. But a lot of dancers especially don't know, again, because a lot of dancers are so focused on just rehearsing dance that they do not pay attention to every other thing that's happening, especially economically in the country. To be able to say, even though whatever I'm worth, nobody can pay it all because you can't pay for my time. But to be able to live well in this time, in this era, I should be able to earn this in a month.
So it's important to make sure that your price covers your costs, your actual costs. You know, I remember once, like what you were saying about, I had a job in somewhere in the north. I had to charge more because you have to price all those things in, your safety, your risk, the safety of your cast and crew. So the important thing is that when you value yourself, when you tell somebody you have 5K, does that 5K actually cover your costs? You have to think about it. Okay, I wanted to start with that because your spoken word and dance is so, it's so unstructured that many times people really struggle with charging and making a living from it. And I think it's something you can do an entire workshop on. I feel that many people underprice, and their prices do not really reflect the costs that they put into producing that thing. So if you try and extrapolate, like I said, always think about how much do I want to make from this thing long term. So that 10K, 20K, 50K, 100K you're making, it can't cover you, at the end of the day. So you're actually underpricing yourself. You need to do more events at that price to cover your overall costs. So I wanted to start from the sort of the little, ourselves as artists, and sort of move to someone like Ishaya, you do film projects. So for you, you are paying for artists, you're paying for sets, you are paying for things. It's quite easy for you to know, look, this is what this thing is going to cost you. You know, obviously you have problems like this when it comes to valuing your own time as a director or a producer and things like that. But in terms of the input, it's easy to say this film is going to cost so and so. So how do you, I know the money, you know, the money won't come from your pocket. You know, how do you how do you get the funding for these projects? How do you sell them? How do you make your film projects something that people are going to put those big bucks on the table for?
To answer this question, I think for film, and it's an interesting art form because it's at the intersectionality between art and business, and it's also a combination of very diverse but complementary disciplines. So you're talking photography, you're talking sound, music, you're talking performance, you're talking writing. I mean, like, thankfully we have an industry here, and as Bukunmi echoed and as Ruth rightfully said, it all boils down to value, what kind of value you're creating, because art very largely is subjective.
Yeah.
And in terms of how you value art, so whether it's a painting, what differentiates like a Basquiat from the person in neighborhood or Kado, you understand? And it's also how you reach your audience as well. So to answer your question, for film, how we fund films generally, and this is world over, is a mix of very, very different things. Like, it's family and friends, it's crowdfunding, it's grants, donor funds, it is actually making a business case, going to a bank. But then obviously, like, it also boils down, because then the thing with art is that there has to be a skill. So your skill in terms of how do you bring all these different elements together to create this product, and now take that product to reach an audience. Because what Bukunmi said is something that every artist faces, where there's a lot of focus on how to create. However, there's not a lot of focus on how to take that into market, how to take that to reach an audience. And that's where your valuation literally comes in, because like these things are expensive. As she was talking, I was like, it is really a risk, and I'm hoping that she has medical insurance to cover that risk. It's a risk, like a physical risk, and as you said, it can end her career. And with things like filmmaking, our budgets run into tens of millions. And a lot of people just want to know where's my money coming back from. And that's kind of how you now create that value to say, okay, what is the value of this in the marketplace? How am I going to create this, put all the elements in it, and be able to get that same value from the marketplace? And that's the expertise, and that's what your skill as an artist or your skill as a producer in this case is. Your skill is how do I put all these elements together? I'm sure it's the same with you. I think it's a weird meta thing that I'm hearing you ask these questions, and I want to ask you. Because like especially with spoken word, and we've known each other for so long, and like I always ask you how you are able to do this on your own terms, because that's another thing that we have as artists is like, oh, at what point in time are you selling out? At what point in time are you creating the best version of your work?
Can you hear us? Okay, we're speaking into the mic. The sound is not coming out. Can you hear my voice? Can you hear Ishaya's voice? Ishaya, maybe hold on.
Okay, is this better? Okay, so obviously
they're giving us feedback. We're in a world on our own here. We're just doing it ourselves.
Exactly. So there's obviously the point in time that you are asking yourself, am I creating the best version of the work that I'm creating, and actually being able to fund it, that you're paying yourself and the people that you work with. But at the same time, you're not, I suppose, compromising on the work. Just so
that big debate in terms of the marketability of art. You have I don't want to demean any art form because every art form is important, but you have sort of populist art form, you know, entertainment, banal, shallow, like they say, and then you have deep stuff you want to talk about, you know. As a filmmaker, a producer, you're conceiving this product, and over the years you've done so many films. Which have you found to be more marketable, easier to get funding for? You know, some of the sort of, playful things or shallow things, or or the deeper social causes, relevant things.
So I
let me make a suggestion. Okay. So Ishaya, I was asking you the whole debate between sort of shallow art, forgive the term, and deep art. Which one is more marketable as a filmmaker? Which one have you found to be more marketable?
I mean, like, obviously, so-called shallow art, or what you call the popular entertainment. Because obviously you have more people viewing it, or more people on the platforms that have access to that. And it boils down to the creator or the creative at the heart of it, because like with many creators, you have that thing where, as I said about like selling out. So you finish the project, you feel like you did not, like there wasn't anything that you're saying in an artistic point of view or from a creative point of view. There wasn't a challenge in how you're telling the story as a storyteller or a filmmaker. But again, it's one of those things that you have to measure, because like having that thing of, say, critical success or the height of creativity and commercial success is like a uniform that everybody is trying to, everybody is trying to be that person that your work is very deep and meaningful, but at the same time very commercial. I'm still on that journey to make that. I've made films that nobody has seen. I've made some films that some people have seen. And how I felt with the more commercial projects is also the reason why I come back to the more meaningful projects. Because like, at the end of the day, that makes me sleep better at night. That makes me feel like I have created something that is worth saying, because there's that. But then the reality, as Bukunmi said, I have to pay rent. I have to pour fuel in my car. I have to eat. I have to buy the carpet. And it's a reality that, like, I think every artist, and this is not even just a Nigeria kind of scenario, it's a reality that every artist, no matter your discipline, is the reality that you face. And again, that's what I talk about the audience, because I remember when I was starting out, and none of the producers I was working with, we wanted to produce like these obscure films, or like these big issue films that nobody saw, and I'm like, what's the point? And it's part of the challenge as a creative, it's part of the challenge as an artist, in terms of, okay, number one, I'm creating something that has all these different layers, or is commenting on these certain issues, but then it's also captivating the audience in an interesting way. Do you understand? If I'm going to do a documentary, say on NSAR, how is it captivating the audience in a different way than the CNN report or the BBC report? And again, that's your value. That's the value that you create, and how you also market it. Because we're also in the self-marketing. It's the greatest time to be in this kind of space, because we're in the self-marketing space. A lot of artists do not want to do that, but then it's part of the art. It's like how you take it and present it to an audience as well. So yeah, it's a difficult thing that you have to measure, but then at the heart of it, you need to be able to create value, to be able to produce your art, and also be able to make it again. Which is the most important thing, because if you're going to have a career, it's not just a one-off piece. You want to be able to make it again and make it again and make it again.
I honestly feel that there are some issues you raise that you should have deeper conversations about, like the whole issue of how do you make something marketable? How do you take, for those that don't want to just do populist art, you just don't want to do nothing and then have people just shouting and you want to do something meaningful. But we all know that meaningful can be boring and nobody wants to listen to it. So how do you take that serious content and make it marketable? And there are skills, there are things you can do, there are things you can do. And I feel that it's something that you can have a workshop on. Like the use of humor, like the use of street language, like there are things you do and the audience connects with the work, no matter how deep and serious it is, and they start enjoying it. But let me come to my friend here. I remember when you were an angry young writer, nobody will publish you, nobody will give you an opportunity, you were angry with ALS, angry with everybody. And then you took all that anger and you transformed it, you started your own publishing company, you started doing amazing things out there by yourself. So talk us through that process of breaking into the market with the literary work, with the book. All the odds are stacked against you, nobody wants to publish you, everybody thinks you're not such a good writer. And then you go out there and you prove us all wrong. So talk us through that process.
Well, I don't know, the sequence may be different from how you put it now. Because, first of all, before, I don't think I did a lot in terms of putting people wrong with my writing early enough.
Yeah.
And when I set out, I didn't see myself in the space anymore. I felt angry enough to put everything aside. It was more for me that I looked out there and I found that there were so many other people like me, creative, talented, they had lots of body of work, and then nobody just wants to look at them. Especially at the time, poetry wasn't anything. The majority of the artistic community never really cared about rewarding people who are into poetry. There were a lot of prize for prose, and spoken word was also going well then, better than normal poetry. And so it was all an anger against the entire system. It wasn't just, so I didn't see myself in that equation as an individual anymore. I saw a community of many young people who needed something to do, some kind of validation for their work. That's why after my first book, it took me a long time to bring anything out for myself. And the disappointment with my first book wasn't the quality or the production or the material inside, more with the community of writers' reaction in real life. Because in online it was amazing. At the time we that were active on the space, we are sort of famous, to say. Like we were stars. When there wasn't anything like influencers with Instagram and Twitter. It was just writers, because we were seen as people who could take time out of work to come and make the digital space kind of just more than hello and hi, which is what we posted on Facebook then. They just post random updates. So it was really something big online, and then in real life it didn't amount to anything. Having an audience that is so limited in the physical space, and so you were there at my book launch. You were probably like the only ALS person who was very active that was there, and it was strange then. So I said, what can we do for people who are like me, who are so many? And then I came up with the whole platform with the 200 naira chat cards, competitions that we started with those days, and then going into hundreds of thousands after a while. And then at some point I thought, I couldn't just keep doing this with my salary, spending a lot of money on young writers. It was good, I liked what was happening. In fact, right now there are lots of people at the point where I say, if not for this platform, so and so will probably not have come.
Definitely.
But I needed to also stop putting my salaries into something that wasn't commercial, and that's how I went into publishing. I didn't think I was going to be a publisher at any point in time from the beginning. But maybe fate and luck, a few people thought, they just kept pestering me, I want to do my book, I want to publish my book, and then I was like, okay, let me make this informal. And well, it's been quite, it's been an interesting journey, because I can say I displaced quite a lot of people who were more structured, who were a company with lots of staff and doing the thing like, okay, this is a business. And I came in as a one-man army kind of, with the anger, like you said. But the things I've seen over the years is that the literary space in Nigeria, we get a lot of people saying things like it's not commercial, it's not viable. But 7 years ago, you couldn't charge somebody to perform at their event. Nobody's going to, maybe a few random people just like your that you're very popular is performer. A few people like you and Sage, it was just spoken word really, and it was just a few people to pick them around Nigeria. Right now, almost no event happens without some form of creative artist, a dancer, and a spoken word artist. Somebody just comes to me, they speak this art to itself. So I saw that. I think that we don't look at the bigger picture in terms of we have shifted the narrative with the creative industry. Even having places like this where you can display art that people buy, it wasn't something common. And it took a lot of angry people to bring out space. I'm sure when they started this place, a lot of this whole elaborate setup, they may have 3 people in a week or in a month, and it just kept at it. So that's where I came from. Creating something that people will recognize and say, okay, so there's this other category of writers, and they actually needed validation, and they need to be recognized. Myself, I got lucky along the way. The things I was doing that nobody appreciated me for, now began to become, maybe because I have now, I kind of think maybe when you self-sell, they look deeper at you and kind of appreciate what you've done in the past. Because all of the awards I won are not for things I did recently. 2010, 2008 work I've then actually left behind, and then say, let me build these things up. So we need that anger, and I think it's been successful for me in terms of what we've achieved and what the industry is now. We're not looking at how to make enough money to buy cars. Yeah. Not just money to
build houses.
Not just collect something money when you perform, not just to say transport money. Buy cars, build houses, fuel the car, kind of go on vacations.
People are still taking on fueling cars. They buy land.
Yeah, actually, we bought land for this business. So, yeah, it's really good.
Not land, dude. Not massacre. Well, I was going to ask, it threw me off a bit. I was going to ask you about, what do you say to, I'm of the school of thought that art is, because art is not a necessity. If you don't consume art, biologically you're not going to die, So it's sort of a luxury. And very early in my career, I felt like the best way to sell a luxury product is to create a brand. Now once people buy into you, when they buy into your product. So for instance, the name on the book sells the book. So if Chimamanda writes a book, you will buy it because it's Chimamanda. Later you may debate it. In fact, you would even be afraid to say it's not a good book because Chimamanda's name is on it. But if somebody else writes a wonderful book, you struggle to buy it. So when you were talking, I sort of saw how you were very, very active on social media. One of the first people that really used social media very dynamically to market books and to market literature, and made a name for yourself in that regard.
But I wasn't going out for making a name. I was just being active. I was just trying to do something I felt nobody was paying attention to. And this thing works everywhere. I went to a Sabara store a few days ago, and I bought a mug for 16,000. I don't think I would do that if I go to a store, maybe even ShopRite. I won't buy a mug for more than 4,000 in ShopRite. But I saw a mug there. They put fabric on it and used some ink to do some stuff. And they put a cap. Somebody had a cap like what I'm wearing now, and I bought it 16,000 naira. And I was happy buying it, not because I had money to throw around, but it was the way. From the outside of the store, I didn't even know there was something like that. I saw the store and I was like, okay, what's this? And I went inside, the door was locked. I knocked until they opened. And I went inside and I saw everything there. I took pictures and I was like, I needed to get one stuff there. And that mug just spoke to me. That's the same thing with artists. Like, I think sometimes, like they say, you focus too much on the art you're creating. I have like 7 completed novels and some halfway done that I've not even looked at since I wrote them by hand in my book. So there was a period of my life where I was just writing and just writing. I didn't go anywhere, I was just writing. I have books, volumes of poetry nobody has ever seen. And I don't even think I've read them in 10, 12 years myself. So we do a lot of creating. Maybe you get new moves, new dance moves, and you rehearse them. You keep looking at YouTube videos to get new dance steps. But do you even sell the person who is doing the dance step? When you come on stage, you just start cheering before you start dancing. Because only when you start dancing, you start cheering. Because if you don't do the right steps, will they listen to you if you even look at the steps and know the dance? So they need to know you first. And so at some point, if you believe in something, like what she's doing, Bukunmi for example, all of this young creative dancers she's bringing up, they will kind of shine and it will reflect on her, and then people will see her more than they even see those people eventually. That's how I think artists should look at the work. Dike did not start a show. Your Made in Nigeria show was not paid when you started doing it. You remember when we were at Transcorp, when we come all over and then it was free for 2 years, 3 years, and you had I think I met a couple of spoken word people there for the first time. Bash and Co coming in from Kaduna, and sometimes supporting them back to their places. And then people see these things, and then when you came with the show, I said 2.5, or was it 2.5 the first time? I bought 7 tickets. I never told you this, but people love it. When you have a brand on your own, people don't even see the quality of your work anymore. It's the person, oh, it's this person, and then they go for it. Later on, they might say, maybe when they quarrel with you, they now look at you. It wasn't like that. But you're getting your money, and you're getting your so it wasn't, I never went out to like say, I wanted to create. I felt at the point I felt my work wasn't even good enough because of all of the rejections and all of that. So I said, let me look at people whose work were good enough, at least help them find something, and then people decided to look at what I was doing. I thought, oh, it was really good enough, and they decided to reward me. I'm happy for that.
I think branding is very important in the space that we're in. I think it's very important to sell yourself, you know. And if people like you, have you seen Michael Jackson on stage? The guy can just stand, and the crowd is going wild. You know, they're just shouting. You know, that's a brand. You know, whatever he sings, the guy makes funny noises on stage, and people are buying it. So I think it's very important as creatives to really think about your brand and yourself, and realizing that also drives interest in your work. You mentioned Asabar. Yeah, I remember when Zosa started, you know, this mug that she does, and just hearing that you bought a mug for 16K, you know, 15K, you know, a mug that may be 1K, 500 naira, whatever. Her brand has made it 16,000 or 15,000, and somebody's willing to buy. So how are you going to produce a spoken word piece that you can sell for 500K, for 1 million, 1.5? There is no market value for art. You can sell it for 10 million, you can sell it for 100 million. But what are you going to do as Ruth? What are you going to do as Bukunmi? You dance, you just do your hand like this. People are paying 1.5 to just watch you do your hand like this.
Sometimes I feel like young artists, there's this space of consistency and just showing up. And then over time, with time, it becomes clearer. Sometimes it's difficult when maybe you try to like create a face when there's no content yet behind. A lot of who you are now, Dike, is the many years of showing up. Even when no one will see you, you show up. Like there are days where you might perform to a 2-person crowd, and you do as excellently as you would when there's a 1 million crowd. You understand? So I feel personally, yeah, I'm still on the journey. A lot of us are still on the journey. But a lot of times, these big breaks are going to come to people who show up consistently. And over time, you'll be able to gather like some muscles. If you watch all these heavyweight lifters, you know that it's not 5 weeks. It's not 5 weeks.
But when you show up, Ruth, always introduce yourself. When you stand on stage, say, my name is Ruth Mahogany. I am a poet. That's branding. You're beginning to brand yourself. Don't just come, oh, we have a dancer to entertain us, and you just come dance. Nobody knows the name of this dancer. Nobody knows anything about it. You just come dance. You go, then you're just a dancer. You'll always just fade into the mix of dancers. And something I always told myself, I want people to say, I don't want anybody that says I want a poet and comes to meet me, I refer them to somebody else. I want them to say, I want Dike, call my name. Don't just say I want a poet and I show up on your stage. I could be anybody. You know, so I asked them, why do you want me? If you just want a poet, there are 1,000 poets, go get them. So that thing you said about saying no is so important in terms of creating value. Yeah.
That was what I was thinking about when Mahogany was talking about showing up consistently, and I think that a lot of artists don't don't take their time to understand the times. There are times to show up consistently, but there's also a great need for scarcity, a very great need for scarcity. If you show up too much everywhere, you will be, whether they know your name or not, but you will hold no value. Okay? But if you sometimes hold back, it's like this morning I was here and, oh, we really want to see you dance. When? And I don't know when you will see me dance. And they go, don't you dance? I actually dance every day. Every day I'm dancing. But when can we see you? I don't know. So you cannot be an artist, be at every occasion, be at every event, be everywhere, and expect that. My question would be, where's the time you actually have, when do you have time to create? When do you have time to read? When do you have time to even know the people that you're going to show yourself to? When do you have time to know yourself, to even know that minus my art, I am valued myself, you know?
Very true.
So it's very, very important. And for me, this is very important, especially because I have a lot of people now that I'm
grooming.
Grooming and empowering and mentoring. Because, as you say, like, if they know your name, once those people can identify themselves with your name, it will make way for them. One of my kids, she's 20, because we organize like yoga teacher training. So about 4 of them right now can teach yoga classes. Yeah. But I've had some clients say no. Like when I'm away and I'm like, oh, I can send this person, I know that they can deliver, like, and they go no. But then today, one of those clients, I showed up to the class with the girl. And I said, oh, she's teaching you today, but I'm there present. And there was no question, there was no but, there was nothing. And the girl got paid as I would get paid. Yeah. You know, but I just stood. I didn't correct, I didn't say a word. And I was like, oh, that was such a good class, was what the client that said no so many times said to me about the girl. And now I can remove myself from the equation. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So create enough scarcity until they actually, and what's happening over time, like you said, that they will see me more. For me, is that my value just went up with that client. Because then if you want me to teach you, you will not pay me the same anymore. Yeah. Because I would charge you more. Oh, is it me you want? Oh, I have so many classes now. Yeah. Which means I will have to cancel one for you. Sorry, your charge is this. So there is a great need for scarcity. And a lot of artists think it's about hustling and showing up everywhere that it is. Yeah. Actually, I don't think that with him, for instance, that it was the so many showing up. It was, for personal, because I've worked with him as well. I think it was the so many times he spent when nobody was saying, and the few times he showed up, the work that he was doing behind closed doors showed up with him. Yeah. And because of that, when he shows up, he's not showing up alone. He's showing up with all the ancestors that were with him behind closed doors. You know what I'm saying? So if he says today, made in Nigeria, that some people have seen 7 times already, it's happening here, they will come back here. It's the same thing.
No, you're absolutely right. For artists, please learn, please learn the power of, are you available? You get a call, are you available? You tell them, let me check my schedule. Whether you have schedule or you don't have schedule, let me check my schedule. That's it. Just so that they know, you know, that there is something. And sometimes you may have nothing on your schedule, but you don't want to take the job, but you want to keep the relationship. You can then say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm booked on that day, even though you don't have anything, just so that the relationship is still good. It's not like I'm turning you down, I have something already. Then the person knows, okay, this person is busy, they have things they're doing. So now every time somebody calls you, pick up your phone, are you available? Yes, yes, what time, where? You don't know. And let me just check, I'll get back to you. And, oh, I can't do the job, can I refer someone to you? These are things that help you keep contacts. And if you refer someone and the person goes there and does a good job, like she says, your own value goes up. Sorry, Ishaya, you wanted to say something quick? You wanted to say something as well?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I'm really enjoying this conversation. It's very nice to see Dike saying, look, don't just say I need a poet. Call my name. Put some respect on that. And also Bukunmi saying, oh, one of my kids is 20-year-old. I mean, like, just not to overshadow what Ruth is mentioning about showing up, because I mean, there's even this book called The Power of Showing Up, is that more and more, and especially, you know that thing of African time, and this thing about artists, so you're an artist, it kind of gives you a license to be irresponsible and eccentric. And so you don't take meetings on time, you don't deliver on deadlines on time, because you're an artist. And I feel like in many cases that's a mistake. And I think, like, just taking, at least for me, what resonates with me most about showing up, and this is even with some of my friends that are not even artists that have become very successful in their various fields, and they just talk about, oh, it was just I showed up, you know. Something that we take for granted as artists is, oh, you know, I can dress anyhow, you know, I can be blazing first thing in the morning, you know, I can come to a meeting disheveled and whatnot, because I'm an artist. But I think in terms of showing up, you need to be consistent. I think consistency is a very important thing. I think you need to set yourself to a very high standard. And I think what you said about scarce, I actually agree completely with you about, like, making yourself scarce as well. I know how to follow up the radar very many times. But it's a good thing because in terms of bringing your value. But I think what Ruth said is something very important for us, especially up and coming artists. You have this thing of, oh, especially if you do something first and then you have some sort of, you know, success with it, it's now like a license to be useless. And particularly with, like, say, music or like, more like entertainment, like you have that window of indulgence, so being late to things and the rest, which is very bad, and especially when it comes to not just the domestic setting. So when you're talking to international financiers or producers or collaborators, oftentimes I've seen people's career just end just because they didn't take the discipline with their work wasn't there.
I really wanted you to, because I know that we still have to wrap up, but I wanted to talk about collaboration. Because I believe that collaboration are the key to really breaking into, I don't believe that we have scratched the surface. Someone that can honestly say that I have seen the possibilities. My own art form has made tens of millions. Cash has passed through my hand, and I'm not doing it. I've not even scratched the surface. You understand? I don't even have the personality to push it. But I've seen that once you get the content right, this thing can go far. It's just you need to get the content right, find the right balance between deep and entertaining. You know, playful, humorous, but content. And once you get that thing, you can sell. We haven't. Even our biggest artists. Somebody was saying, I was listening to Obi Asika on YouTube, who is, you know, pioneering in this entertainment industry. Even our biggest artists have not really tapped into the Nigerian domestic market. Everybody is touring abroad. You don't have to go touring in Nigeria because we haven't quite cracked the code. But Nigeria is 200 million people. It's a massive market. But for me, I found that doing a collaboration, creating a space where poetry, dance, drama, music will come together, just created an explosive product that could run wild in the market. You're a film producer, you work at that intersection where you bring artists together. I want to see your film with you. And how did you get to essentially? You have to tell me. You know? What do you see about the power of collaboration to forms that we're not yet at the level of musicians and comedians? Want to get to that level? How can collaborations help us get there?
I think collaboration is key, and it's key on both fronts. It's key on the business front. It's also key on the creative front. and not necessarily that they need to be delineated in that sense. I think just generally as a people, unfortunately, we have a very, for lack of a better word, just bad belly mentality. And everybody wants to go it on his own. And it's concerted work and it's concerted effort. You for one, like, I think you have experienced it, and you've experienced the great side of it, but then if we really sit down and talk about it, you can also talk about the many ways you've been burned. And yeah, I mean, like, we have also argued, yeah, you have, in the ways that we've collaborated, when I've told you that, why sponsorships and the rest, like, why you're not looking at the business side of collaborations, and you've had your reason, which is absolutely fair. Because you also want to keep your art pure and you want to keep interference at a minimum. And I think that's, in many ways, that's also the rivers that we navigate and the journeys that we navigate through and through. Is like, okay, first and foremost, how do I communicate this vision, you know, to all the different people? How do the different people that I need to create this work target? Because in many ways that's the way that you can transcend in your work, is that you are able to communicate it, not necessarily sell, but communicate it to the people that you're working with, that look, this is bigger than every one of us individually. And in many cases, and especially with the true artists, they're able to tap into it, you know, like they're able to see that. And then you go in and you do the hard work. And then now on the business side of things is now like communicating or collaborating with the people that are going to take you to markets, the people that are going to put the visibility on you. So whether it's promoters, whether it's marketers, whether it's platforms, distribution platforms that will now say, okay, you know what, we're going to take your work to an audience. And you as a creative agreeing that, okay, you know what, 10% of 10 million is better than 100% of 500,000, and that's a major thing. And it's not like, okay, look, how do you now really work together? I mean, like, sometimes it works, sometimes it fails. In many cases, the failure might not necessarily be, oh, you didn't try hard enough. The failures might just be that, oh, it was either not time, or it was a way to see how you should not do it. But collaborations is essential, and is the only way that even all the industries can develop. We're seeing it more with music, and I keep using music and literature, even though literature in the last couple of years has kind of taken a weird space. But then with music and literature, and that's the thing that keeps me encouraged to stay in my career, is like looking at the advances in that and looking at the value chains that are being created, because like this is the reason why like artists have managers, this is the reason why they have agents, so that I don't need to be talking about money with people. You know, I don't need to undersell myself. Like the agent is going to be able to really see the market and see how my valuation is going to be in terms of endorsements, in terms of my actual fee, you know, and looking out for me in that kind of way. And we see it more and more with music, but then at the same time we also see how unstructured it is. And this is with literally every, like, literature faces its own very many challenges with piracy. You know, where you have authors that people are telling them, sending them their books, you know, PDFs that, oh, I read your book, it's very nice. You know, look at it here, and the author is like, look, I'm not getting any money for this. So 2 decades ago, you wouldn't hear Nigerian music in the clubs or any, like, now, world over, Afrobeat is where dancehall was, what, 2 decades ago, and it's going to stay. And again, it's one of those things about trust, it's one of those things about committing to creating the best possible work, you know, not imitating. And in many ways, we are already doing that. It's just staying consistent with that. It's being able to, you know, grow with that in many ways, because these avenues will open as best as they can. It's for us as artists to show up, you know, and deliver and take advantage.
because many cases you have that there's an opportunity there, but then we're falling short in certain ways. And I think that's the thing that we need to cut. That okay, once we are given that platform, once we are given that space to speak, you know, to deliver, we deliver and we over-deliver. Which we have the potential to, and we see everywhere.
I don't know what time I have left. Have we overshot our time? 10 minutes. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm going to ask you something, but...
Okay, so I was going to take this back to the issue of showing off, because I'm speaking more to individual artists here. He is more on the corporate level with the conversations. Yeah, instead of... Yeah, so for me, like showing off and being scarce, these two things are very, very important. But if you're going to make, especially in this industry, as an individual artist now, not a company that is working with teams and all of that, dancer, spoken word artist, you need, or a writer who is releasing books and all of that, you need to show up, not in terms of coming to perform and all of that alone, but knowing that there are other people in that space as persons and as organizations. Because the truth is that the informal part of this industry is more important than the formal part. Like, for example, I work in a corporate communications team somewhere, and when they're going to do decisions on adverts and stuff like that, and they need this, I'm not going to bring idea that we actually need a spoken word artist. People in the space that this literature exists are more important than some of the skills that we have, because your skills are useless in yourself. Any artist who can sing, who can dance, you're useless as far as nobody is seeing it. And these people who pay for it to see it are the ones that are not oftentimes even the dancers themselves. They may not be as successful as you, maybe dancers are not as successful as you are, but unfortunately, they work in spaces where they can help you commercialize your art. And it's very important to show up. For example, when Dike is doing a show, and I'm also doing shows, but I'm not doing a show now, I can show up for Dike just for a show, because one day he will need an opening act for a show, and that can be my own launch pad for my own show. We tend to, a lot of times, very individualistic about these things. So I'm the best spoken word artist, so anybody doing their stuff, your stage is too small, I can't be there. You know, you can show up without performing and being the thing that everybody eats, like amala now. I don't buy amala restaurant anymore because everybody is doing amala place. When it was just to do a leg back, I would drive to go and eat my lunch, I eat amala. It's the same thing. You don't have to be there and be the one that performs and climbs every stage. I say, oh, I have a point to do. I have a spoken word point. Everybody sees you and they just, when you come on, they say, we've seen him. I saw him yesterday. And even the person I saw him. No, but you can be there to be the one who coaches the person, who gives the person prep talk before they go on stage. I remember when Dike spoke to me at my book launch, I was like, don't worry about this crowd, it's not live, and all of that. When I was collecting my check many years later, the crowd that was there, if they were there at my book launch many years ago, I probably wouldn't have worked hard to get to the point, or I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to even be at that place. So I think that showing up and being scarce are very important things, but they must be applied with caution, especially when you're dealing with people who are not even the artists themselves. The space is as good as those who pay for it. So you must know those who pay for it, otherwise there's no point doing the art in the first place.
So quickly adding to that, like what was very interesting in what you said is something that we can see with comedians. Because if you think about like when Alibaba and it was Alibaba Basketball, there were very few. And you see how they did it with their shows, like where they're like almost supporting each other, like with new people on the floor, and I think that's an important way, and it talks to even collaboration. And again, we see it. We just don't necessarily highlight it enough. And for what you said, like it just came to my head that comedians have also been doing this a lot up to now. Exactly, everybody, exactly. With the skills, exactly.
It's very. I mean, there are two things you said that I think should be well noted. And one, your skill as an artist is transferable. You may be shocked that you will make the greatest money using your skill in a non-creative or non-artistic environment. You understand? So, for instance, I make more money giving public speeches. It's not a poem. But I have that platform because of my poetic ability. But I'm giving a speech. But the money that I'll charge will be more than a normal public speaker. Now you're working in communication, but your ability as a writer gives you more value in that space. So as an artist, you need to understand that those skills are it's not just for audience, it's not just for entertainment, you can use it You can use dance, if you think about it, the spaces that you can use dance in may not be typical dance spaces.
Actually, I think that I'm like, people respect my yoga practice more because I'm actually a dancer.
Yeah.
Because my body I use more consistently than a regular yoga teacher.
Exactly.
And so when I'm saying if you do this, you will get injured, they will listen to me because they know that I know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I wanted to also say that, just add to what you're saying, that this is why I was saying earlier that it's actually important for artists to also look outside the community of art, especially for collaborations. So for instance, I'm a dancer, does not mean that I have to do something with another dancer all the time. You know, Ishaya, so I'm using this platform to say to you. Wait, no, it's not marketing. No, but for real, I've had a film idea, so
because the way you don't teach your shoe like this, I'm also making it.
No, but seriously, I feel like dancers need to, artists generally also sometimes need to look outside their own art form into like other art forms and then collaborate with them. And I just wanted to say that I totally agree with you that a lot of the times especially for artists, a lot of decisions or where your name is being mentioned is not necessarily where you know people. You know, the first time I ever traveled to France, the visual artists, I had nothing to do with them. We had just been we were in a festival together, and they had this thing that they had been working on for a year before I met them. We met at the festival, they saw me dance and all of this. I said hello, we had drinks one of the nights, we had conversations, that was all. And they had already casted the role that I got. They already casted it for somebody else that I would call a mentor. She's an amazing dancer and teacher, and the dean at the University of Florida, you know. And the moment she said she couldn't make it, my name popped up somewhere in the conversation, and I'm like, me to take the place of, you know, it was so shocking. So sometimes the places where your names get mentioned, or where someone will even propose that they need somebody with your skill set, has nothing to do anywhere near the stage. Yeah. So it's very important to make to show up in spaces like that as well. Yeah. Like me being here now, I'm not dancing, but you know, I'm showing up here as a dancer. When it comes to economics or politics, a dancer, it's also necessary for you to show up in spaces like that and know what's going on. Yeah, because this is also where you live, and it's very connected. And it's true, my knowledge of at least what's happening in my country, for instance, I mean, like politically, just being that active, that I even got I think I told you about it, there was an exchange program between a school, some dancers from Brussels, and then they selected just a few people from some African countries, and they were looking for artists, dancers that were like active, like that knew about politics and this. And then when I got there, I wasn't the only Nigerian, but every time they're talking about politics, the way I would show up and say, the lady was like, wow, you know, and like this, I got another contract for something else. So it's very important that we don't bury our head only in the, oh, now I need to make this film, now I need to make this dance, now I need to, and actually, just lift your head a bit and see every other thing around you and get inspiration from that.
That's a very important point, and I always tell the young creatives I work with, know your society, know your history, know your culture, know your politics. I can't tell you how much of an advantage it gives me in my art that I know these things very well. In the end, if you're just a geek poet, you can be talking rubbish. You know, so people can call me and say, Dike, I want you to address this issue, and they know that I will address that issue with my art and address it well. You know, but if they say, oh, Ruth Mahogany, I want you to come and speak on gender rights in Nigeria, and you don't really understand gender rights in Nigeria, you just come and start talking some fluffy thing about women, some generic statements. You know, people listen and say it's nice, but you didn't go deep to the issues. So artists that really understand their society are always better, always have an advantage over those that don't. And then just to sort of end on this point of collaboration, you know, we're all here. I've worked with Ishaya, I've worked with Ruth, I've worked with Bukunmi, I've worked with Joy plus one. I've worked with yes, I've worked with this one. You know, it's important that we call each other. You understand? It always annoys me, even Abuja artists. There's this particular, I won't call his name, upset me so much. Every time if somebody from Lagos, he'll hype it, oh, this person from Lagos. But when it's a so-called local artist from Abuja, it's like, that's wrong. You have to appreciate the person beside you first. You're here, your local community, you have to be collaborating with each other and hyping it. Otherwise, Lagos is the way Lagos is. The only way we can get there is to collaborate with each other and produce works that they hear about in Lagos. I was in Lagos yesterday, and I was very proud. You know, a spoken word artist came up to me and said, "Oh, where can I go for open mic?" I said, "Listen, the only consistent open mic is Abuja." And she was like, "Yeah, you know, it's true. You know, I heard about it." And it made me very proud because that is something that we're doing in this city, and they are hearing about in Lagos and talking about in Lagos. Now they want me to come and be a slam master in Islam they are doing in Lagos. But why? Because of the traditions that we've built in Abuja Literary Society. You know, so this collaborating with each other is very important. I know I can't act. When you're doing your film, call me to do cameo. I cannot pass.
Okay, you said it now. You said it now. There are witnesses here. You said it now.
You know, honestly, let's collaborate much more effectively with one another. It will really help to move the industry forward.
Sorry,
last word.
Before we close, one thing you mentioned, and I think it's very important to say, because when you talked about being knowledgeable about your society, and it's something that I also know that you do very well, is read. Just read books. Like it's a very important thing to know. And now more important than that, and this is me being curious, particularly for Sam and for Dike, because you are the people that have the 9 to 5. The art is the side hustle. Meanwhile, as I said, you want 9 to 5 is not the side hustle. Whichever one, there's the salary at the end of the month. And I think it's also important for artists to know that, because I think it was before Dike, and it was also when Dike told me that you're doing this thing. This is all you're doing, film. I made myself had to assess that. It was, I remember it was Judibia, this is many years ago, because he also had a 9 to 5, and he also asked me the same question. This is all you're doing, film. And we figure out how to, patch here and there. So I don't know if Ruth has a 9 to 5, but then I think it's also important. Okay, so kindred spirits, thank you. Yes. And it's a but I think it's also a scenario where and I want to ask you, how do you guys balance that? Sam, as you said, you said it very vaguely, and then you go know. Especially this one's with the Abuja, say, oh, I work in policy, So I want to know first of all, what's that policy? But then also how you guys balance that. Because like with Dike, him I always cut cap for. Like this mad respect, because I've never known it. I entered one chance and we roughed it the way we did. But then how do you do it? And also how do you encourage artists? Because that's one of the things that I tell you, don't quit your day job. Yes. But I know it's also difficult. Particularly for Dike, when we worked together, I saw how he was literally carrying the whole production on the show. And which is a remarkable thing. You're on a league of your own. How do you guys do it?
For me, like I said, art has already been something part of me before I got to the point where I needed to earn a living for myself, as a kid. So when I began to do it as I knew I had to have a career. So it wasn't, at no point did I decide that I want to do art because I want to make money. I was doing art because I wanted to express originally. And then from there, if it became valuable, then I took it upon myself to, make money from it. But the thing is, I don't know, most artists I know that are serious, they are very serious. They have the capacity to do so many things at the same time. Sometimes I look at myself and I'm like, I can do that one, I can do this one. And then I'm seeing somebody coming to me and say, I don't have anything to do. And I say, but you are doing this, you can't commercialize it. I think what I would tell all artists is, look for the part of your work that can actually bring you another income other than just being on stage. For example, for someone like Bukunmi, she can actually come, like my office, I would try to explore it. She can actually speak to, speak to corporate organizations to say, this is your senior management team. You guys do retreats every time. One of your retreats, give me a 2-hour session to just make people relax. Maybe on a Saturday during your 3-day program. We're outside. These are things you can do that will become a regular business. For me, my business side of my artwork, I have to spend a lot of money setting up a digital platform that takes away the time I have to start speaking to people everywhere. So I get emails instead of me coming to say, do you have a book? Do you want to publish your book? So you might want to spend a bulk of money on, say, develop this way of making more money. Because as an artist in Nigeria, the industry is not very straightforward. So you can't say I can get 10 million before the end of the year. What if you only have one good show, like coronavirus happened now, for example, and you don't have any stage to perform throughout the year? What if coronavirus was still raging widely now for 5 more years, and you can't go on stage and you can't go, you need to know how to make some commercial part of your work. And then when you get those small monies, I don't need no more writing, but generally, when people make a little bit of money and everybody sees that you have made money instantly, I kind of think you're setting up yourself for failure already. You need to upgrade gradually. So they gave you 1 million at a show, doesn't mean you have to move out of Maraba immediately to Guarimpa. Like, it's just a general sentiment. So for writers, a lot of them I see where they make off money, maybe they perform somewhere, that evening or the next 1 week, you begin to see them with new clothes instantly. I don't know, you may agree with me or not, but you need to be gradual in your progress as a person, and the same thing with writers, because this money won't come the same way every day.
Well, I was going to say, for you guys that are free, full-time, this thing, please, savings. Full-time artists need financial advice. Savings. You need to be saving seriously. For those of us that have my life is crazy, but luckily from a young age I learned to multitask. I can't even be a full-time artist, I'll be too bored. I learned to multitask at a young age, so I can do many things simultaneously, no problem. But what if I meet you guys, I'm always worried about, do you save? A lot of artists seem to live from hand to mouth, and I think you're just one injury or the trend will change away from poverty, abject poverty. So when you have a job like that, when you're doing the job, it's like footballers, they just might have 5-7 years, and then they have to live out that 7 years for the rest of their life. They have to be investing actively. I drove one car for 12 years, and it was a hand-me-down. Isn't that I couldn't afford to buy a car, but you have to think about what happens when I can't do this, I can't jump around anymore. You have to be invested, seriously. Right? I can't you guys that do this full time.
Okay, it's almost about the same thing you want to say. So personally, I want to be a very wealthy person, but you have to take practical steps. One of the things is deliberate financial literacy. So being a full-time artist, yes, basically because I need a tag on my name. There are many other things I'm learning. I'm learning to partner with other people and find ways to do business. Because if we want to be very realistic, like you said, the structure for artists is not, so it's not just, you cannot make a whole living, so you can make a part of the living from art. So there are actually opportunities around, if you see, and like you said, growth. So personally I'm growing. So another thing I always ask artists is that you want to have a big break. A lot of times we just make money to consume. We have to deliberately start thinking about investments. How can my money make more money for me? Things like that. Deliberately. Or else you feel like, oh, someday it will happen. Someday it will not happen if you don't get to it. So,
if I may say, you shouldn't even, I know it's not possible, ideally, you shouldn't feed off your direct labor. Wherever possible, don't feed off your direct labor. Invest your direct labor and feed off the dividends of your investment. Because all it takes is for something to happen to you and you're gone. It's cut off. So if you get 10 million from performing tonight, don't eat that 10 million. Man, if you have to sow Gary and man invest the 10 million and let the 10 million make you money. Alright, so artists really need fun. And it's not just all these big guys, they do one hit, you see them on TV, 3 years later you see the person slapping on the road. You understand? It's gone. It happens all the time, so it's very real. So never, even me, I have a good job. I always tell myself I'm just one salary away from poverty. All it takes is, it's like, feeding on your direct labor is like when you're using this hand pump. As long as you are doing like this,